Hello there, my name is Lemin Jai. So last week, the draft constitution fumbled after members of the National Assembly voted down a bill that could have seen the country get a new constitution, but not also that could have seen a brand new republic, that could have birthed a brand new republic. Massive development there. People have been talking about it. Tongues have been set wagging as a result of this development there. My guest today, the big guest, is Dr. Sidat Jobe, a distinguished career diplomat who will put everything into context for you. We will speak on the failure or the debacle there or regarding the draft constitution, but not just that, what's left of the change. 2016, Gambians voted for a change, and this transition, there's been a lot of talk that it's going to center or anchor on a new constitution and a new republic. Dr. Sidat Jobe, thank you very much for accepting to speak to the FAD Network.
Thank you very much, Mr. Njai, and I'm very pleased to be with your network in order to talk about this situation that we find ourselves in.
Thank you.
After what happened last week in Parliament.
So first, give us your opinion there. What do you make of the fact that this is one thing that this coalition government promised Gambians? I'm not even sure whether it's a coalition government anymore, but this is the one important piece of business that they pledged to serve out, that is to ensure that the country gets a new constitution. But it would appear that's no longer going to be the case. Yeah. What is your opinion?
Thank you very much, Mr. Njai. Mr. Njai, I think we cannot forgive ourselves if this constitution is not ratified. It's not approved by the National Assembly for two main reasons. One, it was a decision that was so much enthusiastically taken that government was prepared to spend about 116 million to have a commission so that they could study the former considered the 1997 Constitution, make large consultations in the country, in the diaspora, and also the constitutions of various other Commonwealth countries. And I think the error in the debate first started when, for some reason, someone discovered there are certain parts of the new constitution which, instead of being just 135 pages as the 1997 constitution, is 275 pages, and it really covers a lot of domains, so that once approved, it would be like a national constitution which will go on for hundreds of years. That's the British Constitution, which is unwritten, the American Constitution's more than 200 years now, and we would have built upon it. But a lot of criticisms came when someone pointed out that some parts of it looked like the Constitution of Kenya, and that these were copied and pasted. Now, if the part of the Constitution of Kenya that has been cut and pasted, or has been repeated, because you cannot say it in different ways, you have to say it in only one way, I think it's to the credit of those who prepared it, in that they felt that there was something solid that they could bring into this constitution, and I do not think in any way that reduced the impact and the usefulness of the new constitution.
So in essence, what you are saying, it didn't matter really whether the Constitutional Review Commission went and, picked things from other constitutions that are relevant to our context.
To our context. And even to tell you that if the members of Parliament could just reflect a bit, they would have never criticized that. We are in the ECOWAS zone. since independence, we were all striving towards going to an African Union, a United Federation of African States. When we get to that, we will have a harmonized constitution. We'll have a federal constitution. And there will be no problem if what is the constitution of the Gambia is the same as that of Uganda, of South Africa, and so on. And let us just reflect a bit. If you look into the constitutions that governed Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and the Gambia, and the other Commonwealth countries, including New Zealand, Australia, Canada, you would find out that when we were under the Queen's rule, as members of parliament, before we became a republic, nearly all the constitutions, except for a few little specifications, were the same. So therefore, I think the Gambians, MPs, should have said, okay, if there is something in the Kenyan constitution that is so pertinent that our drafters had it in, what was to be done is to read it, see whether they approved of it, whether it tallies with their aspiration, and therefore that shouldn't even have been mentioned.
While that was mentioned, that was one of the things that they had problems or issues with.
Yes.
But what one could clearly see was that there were other issues that MPs had their reservations on.
I agree. I agree that there were other reasons, but the amplification that was given to that had already really created a very uncomfortable atmosphere. And as they did not generally agree with what has happened, most of them, therefore, they used that as a cardinal excuse before they talked about the emoluments of the magistrates, about the
judges, the term limit, the retroactive law.
The retroactive law, and they talked also about the religious implications of the Constitution, whether we were going to be a secular state or a religious state, what the role of the Sharia would be, what was the position of the president, what were going to be the two terms, when do they apply, is the law going to be retroactive or not? And then we had the most unfortunate decision. When this constitution was drafted, and in my humble opinion, it should have gone as it did to cabinet. It was the constitution of the new republic. And it came at a time when we have foreign troops in this country. The economic is here, and I did not see the reason why some MPs were beating their chests and talking about their independence and so on and so on. We want to be independent. But the best way to be independent is to have a document that is respectable and that reflects what the Gambia is after 22 years of tyranny. That document coming from the government should have been the government's baby, should have been introduced to Parliament in the following manner. Here is the new constitution. This is, after all, the inquest and the consultations that were made, and you are to examine it and perhaps even vote on it chapter by chapter to have a consensus, and we approve the whole thing. But when you bring it to the MPs and you tell them that they have no ability of being able to modify it, and they see all these different...
But that was clearly untrue. That was not true.
Yeah,
the fact that some people are saying they didn't have the authority to, some would say, to even remove a comma
so
from the charter.
Exactly, Ms. Njai, and that's the reason why I think that there's something fundamentally wrong in the way this was presented.
What do you think was fundamentally wrong? Because if we want to, forge a way forward, we'll first have to diagnose the problem. Why do you think this charter failed?
Yeah, I think that explanation will have to come from government, and especially from the Attorney General. Because nowhere in history has an Attorney General gone to a National Assembly or Parliament to prepare a document which he stood neutral in. He did not defend the document at all, and he allowed by blocking their hands, they could not modify the document, and at the same time they were telling them that if they approved it 3/4, then it will move into a second phase where they will be able to modify it.
Yes.
What's the logic behind that? But you see, I want to approach this without any acrimony. No. We already have enough problems, and the world is watching us, so everything that could unite us is better. I feel that the best thing to do, instead of lamenting on the 116 million that were spent on this is not lost. This is a beautiful document with a powerful review of all what has happened. And we should congratulate the drafters instead of denigrating them, instead of trying to pull them down or try to make them look little. I think the government should now
In your opinion, clearly the CRC did a fine job.
They did a wonderful job. You should read the document before criticizing it. 275 pages. That's the draft constitution. The 1997 constitution is 130 pages. You can see, and if you go through the explanation, the review of the whole thing, it shows you the energy, the effort, the mental exercise that went in to do it. And I say congratulations to them. They've not lost anything, that the people who are crying them down will soon apologize to them again. And for that to happen, in the interest of the prestige of the government, I think cabinet should meet and give authority to the Attorney General to come back with the document, allowing the MPs to go through it carefully to see what amendments could go in, to remove the type of ambiguities that are there, and to be able, in the final analysis, by voting chapter by chapter, come to the end and have a consensus which could go to referendum.
How soon do you think this should happen? Because clearly we don't have much time.
Immediately.
You have 2020 immediately.
Immediately. I think that by the end of this week, and this doesn't take a long time.
This doesn't take a long time.
We should not get ourselves trapped by formalities.
But don't you think the government has already made up its mind? Because this draft constitution failing, you could see the signs was way back as in, when when this document was submitted to the president.
Yes.
What we have seen is that cabinet members, that's ministers, they expressing their reservations about the document, saying this and this and this did not favor the government or the president, and so we don't support this and we don't support that. So that clearly you could see the signs.
My dear friend, we are a very small country of 2 million inhabitants. At the time that I'm talking to you now, more than 2 million Syrians and Iraqis are trying to return back to their homes. Everything has been devastated. Some of them are professors, doctors, lawyers, of all the walks of life. Everything that they knew in the past has been broken down to pieces. We do not have time to wait. If the president would request, and one can understand him, that ECOMIC stays here so that we could be able to go through the other phases of our reforms, it is high time that we show the world a responsible face if we want them to listen to us. Because it is immediately after Jammeh's departure that the interim government, which was headed by President Barrow, the Foreign Minister Hussein Mudabo, and the other ministers, were able to portray an image of a solid government. And they were able to prepare their development plan, were able to consult all the development partners, and we went in that solidarity to Brussels. And because of that, we were granted 1.4 million euros.
But that failed spectacularly. You were ambassador at the time.
Yes, I'm ambassador. I won't say it failed. The grant was given, but immediately when the president came out with all the big welcome that he was giving here, there were certain structural changes in government and in our approach to the international community. And they saw that what was happening was not really some guarantee, and the money was with them, so they blocked it. But you see, Mr. Njai, I come from a school of thought where we do not want just to criticize. Everyone can run down somebody, run down the government, and so on. Mistakes have been made. Yes, it has been rumored that the government was not pleased with the term limits, and that the government has not been pleased with the type of power that was going to be reserved to the governor, to the president. But I think the president, in his position, if he uses it, if he doesn't listen to people who are keeping him away from getting good advice, or consulting with all the other members of the coalition government, he could call them in and tell them, look, I would like to have 10 years, but I wouldn't like to count my 5 years. That's one of the problems. Now, if they arrive at a modus operandi, either they say exceptionally, because you are an incumbent, and the fact that normally you should have left after 3 years, pushed it to 5 years, and because we've given you a full term, that's the reason why we are counting it as five full years. In one
that
way
would have
or
been
other,
a good,
that would have given him, at least you say, we accepted that you take 5 full years, and because of those 5 full years, we thought that if you were re-elected, you are entitled to only 5 more years because we want to rigorously observe the term limits of 10 years. Now, if he is adamant and not changing, they may decide that exceptionally, they could decide to count the 10 years from the next elections. But if in consideration of national interest, the president sees to it that the majority wants him to make the 5 years inclusive, in the interest of stability, this would be a personal sacrifice for him to make. Someone who wanted to stay 3 years has stayed for 5 years. He is now capable of staying another 5 years. It would be one of the best gifts that he could give to the Gambia in the consolidation of its democracy. So one, they solve the problem of the 10 years. The second thing would be all the other things that the president is a bit uncomfortable about. But he discusses it not with his cabinet, but with people outside his cabinet, who, instead of just drumming to the music that the president would like to hear. They will give him advice as to what will give a consensus so that we could move ahead. Once all that is restraining the president and his government in the adoption of such a powerful document, which the whole world will be proud of us if we go through, there are quite a few little things that should be looked into point by point and arrive at a consensus at the level of the National Assembly. And at this point, I would like to tell you that we made a big error when we first sat into this new parliament. There is a decision that was taken which was totally illogical. And I do not know how seasoned politicians could have allowed such a thing to happen.
And what is
this
that thing?
was when they voted that once they're in parliament, all the MPs belonging to various parties were free to take their independence. Meaning that once they have a problem with their party, they can move to another party and immediately they will continue receiving their emoluments. The important thing there is not their political conviction, but their political opportunism. Because if you are with a party and you feel that the other party will be able to materially give you more and will not restrain you to follow party disciplines on various other things. So you
can do whatever you want.
You move and then there is not even a by-election. And this is one of the reasons why I was a bit uncomfortable when a veteran, a gentleman that I have a lot of admiration and respect for, Halifa Sallah, recently, when there was the vote about the councillors at the level of the municipalities,
local government,
that Sallah voted with the MPs to be able to give them their freedom.
The freedom, yes.
Now,
clearly.
that freedom,
from political parties,
that
yes.
freedom is a shameful freedom.
You don't agree with it?
Not that I don't agree with it, it is ethically wrong. And I think the first thing after the 2021 elections to re-establish is that an MP who is voted in remains a member of his party, and if he decides to cross carpets, he should resign, and there's a by-election. If he wins as an independent candidate, he is in parliament as an independent candidate.
But the argument that was pushed is that it effectively ties their hands to their political parties. So instead of you serving the national interest, well, the definition of national interest here can be very subjective, but according to some of the people that really supported this move is that most of them would be bound to their parties instead of the national agenda.
Gentlemen, when we say that, it's as if though the parties do not have the national interest. Can you, for one instant, imagine when members of Congress in the Democratic Party decide that they want to move out of it to support the Republicans on something else? They could vote for a project by being in their own party. Nothing prevents the members of parliament, and it could be understandable. And the example is, do you ask yourself the question, why Halifa Sallah, having voted for the change in the municipalities, decided to vote for the constitution? Because that was the only logical thing that anyone could do. I'm told that Jatta wasn't in to vote, but I think if Jatta was there, he would have voted for it. I give him that benefit of the doubt. Mr. Njai, I am not advocating for a constitution. I'm advocating for the image that we portray to the outer world of what type of a country we are.
And now the transition, it would appear that it is really at a crossroads, if you like, because like I said, one could really argue that the transition was anchored on a new constitution that would birth a new republic. And this is one of the promises that the president himself made. And now a lot of people are saying that the president is in fact part and parcel of those that spearheaded the failure of this draft constitution.
Okay.
Now, what do you make of the president's role in all of this? Because what has also happened is that there have been reports, the international diplomatic community, chipped in, they called on the MPs to vote for this charter. But not just that. What has also happened behind the scenes was the fact that the international diplomatic community wanted to meet the president on this issue, but flatly he turned them away. What do you make of the president's role in all of this? Someone that promised to ensure that, in fact, the reason why President Barrow said he was not going to resign in January, according to the 3 years deal, was that there are things that are very important that he needs to ensure that they are achieved. One of them, he did say, is the new constitution. What do you make of his role in all of this, in this debacle?
I'm very glad that you've mentioned that, and in the context that you did it with a lot of understanding, without being patronizing or underrating the president. Let us face a few simple facts. The president, when he came into power, made it quite clear that he had no experience in government, but he was going to surround himself with people who could give him good advice. And I think until he changed the government for the first time from the group that led him up to the approval of a development plan, he was right on course. But he's a human being, and I give that to him. And it is very difficult in his position to be able to see quite clearly into certain things. In my opinion, the president is surrounded by various factional groups. And if these people were seeing things as you are seeing it, as the majority of Gambians are seeing it, the president will definitely not have fallen into this trap where he finds it difficult to get out of because his personal interests are being pushed forward by people around him who force him to create this stalemate. If they were able to give him the type of advice that he would have been able to benefit from by the coalition members, who you see even some of them have now come right into his own camp, this would not have happened. So instead of speculating, I believe that the president was also erroneously advised not to see the European groups, the British, the European Union, and the other UK and others who want to see. That was a big diplomatic mistake. I do not know whether his minister had traveled or something of this sort, but that was one of the most fundamental mistakes that we could make. We have ECOMIG here. Since it started until now, in one way or the other, Europe is participating in their stay here. If I was to advise the president, with all what they've said, that he was the one against it and so on and so on, he would have received them. He is the head of state. If he didn't want to get involved in the changing of the constitution, what would have been diplomatically correct would be able to tell the emissaries themselves. Because one of them is representing the Queen, the other one is representing the President of the United States, the other one is representing Europe. And if you know that it was Europe that gave us 1,400,000,000 euros for our development, and if we had stayed in course with solid projects, with the project management details, we would have been going from project to project and the funds would come. But once we derailed that, they went away. So to come back to what you say, and instead of making it a big literature, I think the president should own or be made to own that this was a big mistake. And then what could he do? He decides to meet with the other political parties. There is nothing wrong in that. That would even make him become a greater person. He'll be respected. And to brainstorm with them, Halifa, Usainu, and others, to see to it that they arrive at a modus vivendi which will enable them to give the country a constitution after its approval and referendum, so that we serenely go to the elections of 2020.
Where does this leave the relations between the Gambia and development partners? Because clearly they are disappointed. They did ask the MPs to make sure that this the charter is approved. The MPs came out and railed against that, saying the Gambia is a sovereign country. We are not going to tolerate people interfering in our business. And the president all the time was part and parcel of this, to the extent that he refused to meet these people over this. Where does this leave our relations? You are a career diplomat, someone who knows and knows a lot about.
That was a very sad. That was a very sad decision, and I will just tell you what the consequences are. You see, when we beat our chest and get very angry and denounce the West and denounce our development partners, or even imagine denounce ECOWAS, there are consequences to this. You do not want to receive my ambassadors. We sent you a mission. You want us to be able to help you to maintain economic, we'll not do it. They refuse to do it. And if they refuse to do it, economic is going away. And it's one of the desires of the president. And if they do that, it doesn't end there. You see, we over-exaggerate our independence. When we say we are independent, we should also be lucid enough to know what that entails. You remember some years ago, to express our independence and freedom, when the dollar started tumbling down, it was about 250 to 5,000 CFA. Or it was,
I remember.
Or let me even give you something precise in dollars. When I came into government, the dollar was $18 to $1. $18 to $1. And at some point, when it became 30-something, 40-something dollars, Jammeh wanted to revolt against it. You remember, he decided to fix the rate of exchange of the dollar. But this that
was a bad decision.
We do not control this. We are not independent, monetarily speaking. Great Britain supervises whether we like it or not, like France supervises whether they like it or not, the CFA and the dollar C, which is related to the pound. When I was an assistant commissioner in Brikama, my monthly salary was $300 a month, and the commissioner was earning $400 a month. Because then the dollar C was $5 to a pound. Have you seen how much it has evolved? Up to about 50-something dollars now to the euro. Who is controlling that? We have no end to that. But that's another conversation. You are asking for the consequences. And I only hope somebody can warn the president before he puts him in a very uncomfortable situation. Because if they want to revenge, they will block us. And I give you a very, very simple example just near us. When Mali decided to make the coup d'etat because the president, the prime minister didn't want to leave, what happened? ECOWAS gave them their conditions.
Yes.
And until they accepted those conditions, they refused to lift the ban on them. Yes. Now we could face sanctions. The quickest sanction in the hands of Europe today is to block, is to say that we cannot finance you anymore for ECOWAS. If you do not want to listen to me, and they could have never imposed on us homosexuality or so on and so forth. Let us not over-exaggerate. You're a sovereign state, but know how to face it and explain it. But by refusing to see this, do you think they will think tenderly? Now imagine you want to see them urgently to finance something that is urgently necessary
very
for you
critical.
to do.
It becomes a problem for
but
you.
They will say no. If you refuse to listen to me, what obliges me to answer to your call? But I do not want us not to focus. I want to give you a strong recommendation on this. I think many Gambians, if I cannot say even all Gambians, appeal to the president not to create at this stage a misunderstanding between us and the development partners. If he's been told that they were coming there to impose on him certain things, they cannot do it, because if he faces them and tells them the reality of things and what his country can accept and what it cannot accept, and his gratitude to all the assistance that they have given us since the end of the Jammeh regime, they will report the same thing, and that they are logical enough to believe that you do not impose on an independent developing country certain things. I think they may even, I'm trying to read their mind, why at this stage would they have wanted to see him, was to see with him how he could use his office to try to change the situation in the National Assembly.
And that would have been very...
That is it, because he has refused to see them, so he doesn't know exactly what they wanted. Now, one of the things that he could do, and I hope he does, is to quickly get all his advisors to tell him the truth about what approach and what he should do to diffuse the situation, so that the thing could go back immediately to the National Assembly with the strong support of the Attorney General, giving them a free hand to debate page by page, chapter by chapter, and to remove this 75% this thing. That was one of the killers of this thing. 75% of winners. Let them go through it chapter by chapter and say those who are for yes and those who are for against, until they finish the whole thing. They arrive at a modus vivendi, and then it goes to the referendum. And in the referendum too, I am asking them not to go all the way to this 75%. And we have complicated all these things because we could have used an easier procedure. We are a sovereign state. There, I agree with them that they are a sovereign state. They could have decided that in order to pass this, they need a 50% majority to get it passed through. And then for the national election, they need a 50% election. Some said even that in it there are clauses which makes Dabo to be absolved from felony, or whether
because
he had
clearly those are some of the partisan arguments that were being pushed before the...
But you see, as for Dabo's candidacy, or whether he's a felon, I think when it comes out of the mouth of any Gambian who has blood flowing in him and nerves, it is one of the most cruel assertions that could be made. If Dabo was arrested in the streets because he was protesting without arms, to go and ask for the body of Solo Sandeng that all of us thought is already dead, and some people who are arrested. He's the head of a party. And he went into the streets because there was a law
around public,
what is it called again?
The public order ban.
The public order ban was in that we should be ashamed that we are a democratic state, and some people who are protesting just to be able to know where people who have been arrested have been taken to are picked up under such a nonsensical law, locked up in prison because of that law, and when they come out of prison, they're considered to be felon. Considered to be felon up to the point that they think that should prevent them from being able to stand for elections.
What if someone says Dr. Sidat Jobe is saying these things because he is UDP?
No. Let me tell you frankly, if this applied to Halifa Sallah or to anyone, I would have said it. But even if I am UDP, can you believe that someone who has worked for his party for 20-something years, who went out of the street and has he didn't kill somebody, if he had stabbed somebody to death, or if he's done something else, even when Barrow won, it would be very difficult to say that let's liberate him. He did nothing. He was in the streets to protect his own rights, to express his own rights. Even after him, Killer AIDS and all these other people who were manifesting, all of them just went out in the street because they felt that it was their right to do so. So I'm not saying it because of Dabo alone. And I'm not saying it because he was also a vice president and he left the vice presidency. How many vice presidents? Mitterrand got rid of Chirac, but Chirac stood and became president. Abdou Diouf got rid of Mustafa Niasse, but Mustafa Niasse stood for 2 more presidential elections, and so forth around the world. Let us concentrate on what is essential. And let us not allow partisan thinking to block us. And I think the sad thing is...
Which side is guilty of this? Because clearly, if you look at the failure of the draft constitution, what you would see is that clearly there were different sides. You have this camp that are largely people that come from UDP persuasion. You have this other side that are largely adherents or supporters or people that are loyal to President Adama Barrow. Yeah. And then you have these other fringe sides, yeah, people that also have their own interests at stake, own partisan interests at stake. So it would appear that the entire country is guilty of this partisan thinking.
Very good. I am very pleased that you brought that in, and to tell you that there is a simple answer to that which shows that in fact, except for extremist partisans, there is, in fact, a very strong psychological support for this document, where the UDP will vote, the UDP members would vote for this, and Halifa Sallah would vote for it. Because what would bring Halifa Sallah on this side is because he knows that this has much more beneficial benefits for the Gambia than trying to block it. So you cannot say that Halifa Sallah is a member of UDP. And Halifa Sallah is such a strong veteran. He is the architect of the coalition government. He is the architect who thought of how to get rid of Jammeh by bringing all the parties together. And he will remain in history as someone who has strategized with all the parties to get us to be at this stage. If at this stage, with all the acrimony, he would come, not on the side of the UDP, but realize that the majority who have voted for this are right, it shows that we have a good start. I think we should do everything to depolarize our positions. We are asking for a constitution. We're not asking for anything that belongs to one party and not to the other. It's a document that will be a guarantee for the country. It will lead to stability. It will enable people, the outer world, to respect us. And if the outer world realizes that we are a small country, but we are united in our approach, the impression which we gave immediately after Jammeh's departure, and that we had all these reforms to do and we are doing them correctly, the smallness of our nation will not count anymore. And we will be able to raise up anything that we want to, because we will be respected.
It would appear that you are somebody that was quite needed. You were in his government, but he, removed you. Well, the Minister of Foreign, well, it's the president. He sacked you.
Yeah.
What do you think led to your removal from the Barrow government? It would appear if you were in the government, you would have given the president quite some good advice.
Yes.
Why do you think he decided to get rid of you?
I wanted to make that very easy for the government. At some point, for some reason or the other, or the fact that the foreign minister did not explain to Barrow the importance of ambassadors in the various countries, my contract came to an end at a period that everybody was clamoring that, the UDP ambassadors and the UDP members of the government should be removed. So when he removed the head of the UDP, who was then vice president, and then removed the Minister of Finance, and then removed the Minister of Agriculture, then it came to us, the ambassadors. And as we were labeled UDP ambassadors, because we were recommended by Hussein Dabo on the merits of what we've done, when I landed in France, France was about to give then 30 million euros towards the Gambian development plan.
Of course.
By the time that I spent about 8 months, it moved from 30 million to 40 million. The week before we went to the Francophonie meeting, to the meeting in Brussels, it became 50 million. And France became the biggest contributor to that sum of money. But because there are people around the president, and I was labeled as UDP, and he knew that Dabo has also recommended me, there are other members of the Barrow government who wanted me to, other people, I don't want to mention their names, who are not Dabo, who wanted me to go to New York. You understand? So I, perhaps because I was a foreign minister, they recommended me to go to France, I speak French, and I think I did the best that I could do. I became very close to Macron, foreign ministry, and various people at the Africa department of Élysée, and so on. But I did not cry about it, because Barrow wanted people who are in his parties, and he was erroneously given that you should get rid of the UDP people and replace them by people from your own party, or if you threaten them that you will remove them, they will all come and join you in your boss, which would be a very naive thing to do.
Did you feel disappointed at all?
No, I didn't because
No,
I didn't because I feel that if the president wants to get rid of UDP ambassadors and our contract came to an end, you understand, and he did it to Kemeseng Jammeh, he did it to me, and did it to a few other people. Some he has extended, meaning that there was no clear policy about this.
The way and manner it was done.
Huh?
The way and manner it was done.
Yeah. But then, to be very frank with you, that's the most minor problem that I have. And I would even confess something which should make Barrow really comfortable and not feel that I'm angry with him. I am very glad that he recalled me.
Why? Why are you happy
I am
over
glad that he recalled me because I think, without exaggerating, I have an opportunity of being in my own country when we are going through this very terrible crisis. And modestly, anything that I can do to maintain the prestige of the Gambia. Because if we do not have that respect of the international community, we can shout our heads over, they will be so indifferent. The only thing we will be seeing are the consequences of their anger with us, or of their lack of wanting to cooperate with us.
How respected is the Gambia? You have been a diplomat your entire life. At one point you were the country's foremost diplomat, Minister of Foreign Affairs way back in the late 90s, early 2000s. You became ambassador in several countries, including France. Tell us about the standing of the Gambia. People say Gambia, countries do not look at Gambia with any respect at all. What did you see?
I will say one thing, that we are very lucky in that the major problem of Gambians is indifference. But here is a country that could be great if we are united. When I was appointed by Jammeh, and it coincided within 6 months, it was Gambia's turn to be in the Security Council. Everyone was laughing and amused of, please, how will Gambia be able to become the president of the Security Council? Countries that are presidents of the Security Council, their staff in New York, some of them have 30 staff members, 40, 50 staff members, covering the United Nations because of its various commissions. We had only about 4 people. There was Blaise Diagne, there was Abdoulaye Salah, who later joined them, and I as a foreign minister. But it is during the period of Gambia's presidency, with the impulse that was also given by President Yahya Jammeh, we decided that the stalemate in the Security Council, where Britain and America and so on were saying that the Libyans will have to be judged in England or in America, we said, let us have a third country to do it. And I presided over that meeting of the Security Council of the United Nations, and we were able to get that done. And this is the reason why Libya felt very much attached to us and grateful to what we have done. It was at the same time that we had also the problem of Iraq and Kuwait. And the Kuwaitis counted on the support of the Gambia and so on. And they helped us a great deal. I think at some point they gave the development of the apron of the airport of the Gambia 46 million to the Gambia. And you would not see, whenever I arrived in a country, and I'm not saying this to make anyone uncomfortable, I was met by big delegations. The British would like to have dinner with me, the Polish, the Russians, and so on. And this is a small country. So it depends on the attitude that we have, on the focus of what we want to do in the outer world. We do not have raw materials. We are not yet pumping petroleum. So what we can give value to is the political voice of the Gambia in the international arena. Once we are respected and seen to be very solid, the Senegalese, respected us so much. Abdou Diouf told me. Really, I did not want to have anything for Gambia to do with in this Casamance thing. And what happened? Abdou Diouf himself told me, tell President Jammeh that I count on you people to help us with the Casamance. That's the first time that there was a meeting between the rebellion and the government of Senegal, and there were more than 9 Senegalese cabinet ministers that came to the opening ceremony in the Atlantic Hotel. And even Senegal counted on us. When you had the war in Guinea-Bissau, and Vieira begged Guinea, Conakry, and Senegal to send troops,
intervene.
They sent troops. They sent troops. Then Gambia, Vieira was even telling Jammeh, you know, you are my brother, my mother likes you, and so on. Very sentimental.
No, but clearly
he wanted him to also send troops. And President Jammeh told me, I think sending troops, this is going to be a very dirty war. Why don't we use our influence on Mali, taking into account that our army was exchanging a lot of things and helping their army, and let us try to broker peace. I was sitting with President Jammeh, with some ministers, and he said he wanted to send some soldiers to Bissau to try to contact Mali. I told him, Mr. President, if we want to broker peace,
you don't send soldiers, because clearly at some point
it's better.
You know, the region thought that your government was supporting Mali.
Yeah. So therefore, I said, and the ministers and the Secretary General were sitting there. I said, I will go myself. The President was shocked, and the other ministers thought that I was crazy. But I thought that was the only way that we could make a psychological impact. How would we get the logistics? How could we land? Then the French proposed that there was a battleship going from Senegal to Guinea-Bissau to evacuate the ambassador. So I went on that battleship. I want to cut it short. And when I landed, Champollion, the Senegalese, Chapelier, the Senegalese ambassador, the French ambassador said, me, I'm going to evacuate, and you are coming in, I'm not going anymore. So I will stay with you here. And this is how we did quite a few missions until we stopped the war, until we were able to evacuate. I had to fly in to go and evacuate Vieira from the hands of the rebellion and fly him to this thing. And we were respected. And Kofi Annan used to call Jammeh directly. And his secretariat used to call me here. And then the United Nations wanted us, and I, with Blaise Diagne, created it in the UN, a cellule for the development of Guinea-Bissau.
So clearly these are some of the things,
that we could be able to benefit from. And we had a lot of influence in Sierra Leone. We went there, visited the camps, and supported them in all the institutions, with Charles Taylor in Liberia. So therefore, I am very, very much optimistic as to the power of Gambian diplomacy and the influence of Gambian politics. President Barrow is a very nice man. If he has very good advice, and if he tries to see how he could have a modus operandi with all the different political groups, and not to make any of them feel alienated, and give them the impression that we are going to follow normal democratic rules. We are all going to our way, but we do not want to leave the Gambia as a fragile state, but a state with a consolidated democracy. The president will definitely have the support of all of them, because we are only 2 million. We do not have any other set. We are fragile. We have the only asset, or what created us, is the River Gambia. Was there no River Gambia, there will never have been a Gambia. And because of River Gambia, there's another mistake which we will talk about another day. We have put a bridge over the river. But we've put the bridge in such a way that no ocean-going liner could go. Ocean-going liners of a moderate size were able to go all the way to Kawur. And Kawur would have been used as the great center for the decortication of peanuts. And the vessels would move from Kawur back to the ocean and take their loads off. But the way we've bridged the river,
then it becomes
there is no meaning to River Gambia. Whether it was consciously done or viciously done, there is something that I cannot understand. And I'm quite certain that President Barrow and the foreign minister will tell you that I've told them this before they started the construction.
That it was a bad idea?
No. They told me that, no, they've catered for it. I think that's what they told them. But the way I see the bridge, I cannot see a ship going underneath it. A big ocean liner and ocean liner cannot go.
It will be a
even a small ocean liner. But Njai, to come back to really what made me sleepless
is the draft
constitution. And I would like to say that we must find a way forward.
Because if you look at the trajectory, there are claims that really clearly we are sailing right through to the Bermuda Triangle. If you look at all the commissions that have been set up, someone would say that when the Janneh Commission failed, now the CRRC, the CRC, sorry, and now you have the TRRC, which is also people are saying that it might also fail as has all these other.
All these things could not fail had the president got very good advice and had he tried to use his political acumen. That we do not live in a vacuum. And there are certain things that you should accept in politics, and there are certain things that you should accommodate. Why did the Janneh Commission not succeed? They made a recommendation, and the presidency was to apply it. And it did not apply it. So therefore, nobody is taking that as a very serious, very serious commission, despite all what had been spent. They said they've seized the properties of Yahya Jammeh. They have been sold. Nobody has been told how they were sold, how they have been valued, and so on. So the people get also very uncomfortable as to what has happened.
Yes.
So now we have the TRRC. The approach, they're very intelligent people, they're legalists, I want to accept all that. But I thought the TRRC, right from the beginning, when they talked about the victims, instead of waiting until they finish all this thing before they recommend the payments that have to be made, if they were doing it successively, that people come, they've complained, they've evaluated this thing, they've been given their compensation, people have a meaning to it. Then comes this big problem of the junglers, what happened to them? And what is going to happen to them? Are they going to open another chapter in their trial and so on? So everything is just dragging and accumulating on. So really, the president is our president, is the president of all Gambians, and it is he who is really at the helm of the ship. It depends on how he navigates. And he has to navigate very solidly and on a very fast course. The president should decide today not to create any new commissions, but immediately to start implementing, and all the blockages that are there, immediately to evacuate them. The president should then try to see how best to save this document. This is a very solid document which is worth its weight in gold, and even more than that. And I use the opportunity again to congratulate those who have written it. Let them have no complex. Let them not feel reduced by anyone. They've done a magnificent job. There are certain modifications that should be made. They should be able to meet with the Minister of Justice and the members of Parliament to very quickly walk through it and to be able to see to it that we have a working document before the elections. There's a little another point before the election.
What if this thing could not pass immediately, and then we would be left with the 1997 Constitution?
Yes.
What would that mean for the change then?
Yeah, but I will tell you that whatever happens, a next government will introduce it again. Whatever it may be,
I mean,
will introduce it.
UDP did say that.
But this one, right from the start, I did mention it. I did mention it when we started modifying it for the age and also for the age group, the limits of the magistrates. I said this constitution, when it was written, it was presided by Henry Peters, a very great doctor, a nationalist, who's one of the greatest surgeons in the Commonwealth, was exercising in Britain. He's a great poet. He decided to come back home. He's done a lot of miraculous operations in Bansang Hospital and all over the country. When he finished it with his group, the 2 terms were there. And none of the bad laws that were later introduced into the Constitution were there.
Well, they were not there.
So if you take the Constitution that was sent for referendum, it contained all the good parts of a constitution, approved by everybody, approved by the nation. Perhaps by now, we may just add a few more things to that original constitution that went for referendum, so that we would have had a good document, and we would not. It would be a different constitution.
We would not have taken the route of building a new...
We would not have spent all that money. This could have been modified chapter by, even if they spend a month on it, chapter by chapter, we would have had another paper. Now the milk, as you said, has been spilled. We cannot gather it, but it's not lost. And I am quite certain, Mr. Njai, you and I are not the only ones who believe that this should work. And we should do everything to get it work. But I say the key is with the president. If the president rapidly moves to see to it that this document goes, and that he doesn't block it for anything that may be termed as personal interest, it will put him down into history as somebody who got conscious of the urgency of salvaging his country from a dangerous position. Until now, we are talking, but you do not know what our development partners are sending back home to talk about us. And I know how vicious they are, because all what they think of is sanctions. You see what Trump is doing to Iran, and nobody can do anything about it. Now, if they decide to sanction us, just imagine that they say that they are not going to fund us anymore for ECOMIG. And we see that ECOMIG soldiers are going. We have not even finished our reforms, and we are in such a hullabaloo, as I would call it. It will be very negative for us.
And given the polarized nature of our country, next year is election year, a lot at stake. The president clearly is really trying very hard to ensure that he stays in power, while you have all the political forces around that are also trying to wrest power from him.
Okay.
What is your assessment of how things are going to look like finally before we end this interview? Because there are fears that next year could be the nature how polarized the situation is. That is different political interests at stake. It could really present problems for the country. What do you have to say about that?
All that, Ms. Njai, we should all have a positive attitude towards this country. The human being is endowed by nature to be able to forget his pains. Because if you think of all what we went through the past 22 years, and the joy when we came out of it, the idea was to build such a consolidated democracy for the Gambia, where everyone knows what is his right, and everyone will work hard to make the country prosperous. If we are a solid state, a democratic country with an opposition, and where the opposition is recognized, where it's not just because you are there as a president, you must come down. You are there as an opposition, you will never come up. And you make it a personal thing, that is what leads to conflicts, which of course always ends in losers being on both sides. So therefore, anything that could create acrimony should be avoided. And today, the president should behave like the guardian angel of the country. He has a big responsibility in his hands. There are people around him who cannot imagine life without him, who would do everything to push him to stay in power, and would tell him everything as a guarantee that definitely if he goes for elections, he will win. They may be right, but they're doing it mainly, some of them are doing it mainly not thinking of the president and the consequences of a defeat for him, but they're just thinking of how long they can benefit from his position in power, as long as it lasts. And when it's gone, they've gone away. So we should tell him and beg him to think carefully that he has to make a sacrifice. I think the things he doesn't like in this constitution, in him accepting them. And I think finally, one of the things that when he appoints a minister, they have to go to Parliament to be approved. I think that they should lay aside, because that will create a lot of commotion. If you appoint a minister and the Parliament has to come and then politics come in, it's a problem. I think that's a very easy thing
hold the country back,
to give him his independence on that matter. But Njai, I will say, let him also, in preparation of next year, avoid listening to the sirens. These are mythological ladies with beautiful voices in the Greek islands that will sing beautiful songs for the sailors, and when they get to the shores, they are gone. I have heard that in addition to all the problems we have now, some people are bandying around the fact that, okay, we will go to the 1797 Constitution, but in addition, we are going to ban spot counting. Now, on the spot counting is an acquired right. Gambians, journalists, everyone, on the day of elections, they know what the results are in the various different places. And it is very transparent. Now, if they want to say that they want to stop spot counting, that will immediately make people think that there is an intention of fraudulently counting in commissioners' offices so that they could fabricate results which would please the government or please the opposition, you never know, but that is bad. So anything that could even make people feel that there are plans in order to sabotage the future elections, that people are going to lose their acquired rights of counting on the spot, the president should avoid it. And finally, I would say, President Barrow should know that destiny is very powerful. And for some reason, today he finds himself at the helm of the state. Anything that he could do to sacrifice personal self-interest in some of these little arguments of personal gain and so on,
he should.
If he does that, he will maintain himself as the head of state until we go to the elections. But he would maintain it with the respect of all Gambians who would know that when it was difficult, when we all thought that there was no issue, only he had the key to make the transformation, to make the adoption of this new constitution to happen on time, lead us to an election, and that we open a new page. And in that period, he should do everything to closely work with our development partners, to even correct the error of refusing to receive them by calling them for a meeting, enlarging it to the entire group of ambassadors, and talking to them, and to diffuse the bad blood that may exist. We are a very small country. We cannot afford to fight when we have economic problems, when we have problems of health in this country. So therefore, I think all of us should stop being indifferent. Stop criticizing just for the sake of wanting to criticize. Stop pulling down people just for the sake of pulling them down, as they've put the drafters of this constitution in a very embarrassing position. People believe that this is not a solid work, this is a work that is worth in gold. And if he, Barrow, is able to be convinced of that, and decides to get the right people to advise him as to how to modify this very quickly. Drafters could do this within 1 week to change all the things that have created controversy. It will go to Parliament. It will be approved. And the entire world, contrary to what has happened last week, will acclaim the Gambia as a matured country in Africa, will be respected in ECOWAS, in the African Union, and our voice as a small developing nation will be so resounding that the future will be opened, not only for development, but for helping other countries to imitate what we have done to get into stability.
Dr. Sidat Jobe, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there, but thank you once again for accepting to speak to the FATO Network. Thank you very much, Mr. Njai. I'm very proud of you. That's Dr. Sidat Jobe, former foreign minister, career diplomat at that, speaking to us there, our guest today. Thank you for being there. We'll be back some other time. Thank you.